right, this is Jeff DeGraff with Office Hours, and I'm here with Bob Kulhan. And Bob is a world authority on improvisation, and particularly improvisation for leaders in business. He's written a best-selling book called Getting to Yes and, that's kind of the catchphrase there, The Art of Business Improv. First of all, Bob, I want to thank you to the program, and thanks for being on.
Well, thank you so much. You know, I've really enjoyed doing a little bit of research and watching all your, not all your innovation pieces. However, I enjoy getting my hands dirty and learning a lot more about you. So I can't wait to chat.
Well, I want to know a lot more about improv in business, because typically when we think of improv, we think of Second City and we think of what goes on in comedy and Saturday Night Live and Kids in the Hall and all that kind of stuff. Tell us how it relates to business, and then then we want to hear your backstory, how you got from improv into business.
Sure. Well, you know, to start, I would say all three institutions that you mentioned are absolutely fantastic. Now, the way that we define improvisation in business improv is really focusing on three core competencies: reacting, adapting, and communicating. Reacting, adapting, communicating. If you're focusing on reacting and adapting and communicating, which really is improvisation, then you can spin it in a lot of different directions, and it's completely applicable in business, as at all times we have to be present, we have to be focused in real time in the moment simply to react. We have to react within parameters or to achieve a specific outcome, so we have to adapt. And we always have to communicate our vision, our focus, our drive, the changes that need to take place. So those three core competencies are important, definitely in business, and are the root of improvisation.
It sounds also like a good dinner conversation, or you know, being a professor, you have to be able to do all those things in real time. Now, I know you're also a teacher. You teach at Duke, right? You're teaching at Duke, or you've taught at a bunch of places, Columbia and Duke and a lot of places. But tell us how you started, and tell us how you got to where you are now.
I am a professional improviser, so I was trained at some of those places that you mentioned before, all the Chicago big houses. I spent 15 years from 1994 to 2009 studying and performing and directing and teaching and helping create the art of improvisation, not create it in the general spectrum, small bits and pieces as it existed, and was fortunate to perform at the highest level in Chicago, and then in 2009 moved to New York, and I continued to perform improvisation. Now, in 1999, though, I had a very unusual experience in that the Duke University Fuqua School of Business was looking for some up-on-your-feet, high-energy experiential learning for second-year orientation, and really, as a great example of serendipity, right place, right time, and able to recognize, be aware of what's happening, and then contribute to taking advantage of it, I created or co-created the first improv program in any top-tier business school anywhere in the world, and that really called for me to LLC the company and create Business Improv. And then from there, I was working my way through business schools and exec ed, MBA, bridging over into professors, and then into businesses itself. So for the last 18 years, that has been a major focus of mine. And similar to you, I study behavioral psychology and organizational theory, even behavioral economics, decision-making, how and why we make decisions in real time and how it relates to the bigger picture. And that's all improvisation as well.
Well, it's caught on. I see it's now showing up everywhere. So you've infected all of us. And I was telling you, I have a good friend who's the former head of drug discovery at one of the 4 largest pharmaceuticals in the world, and he took your course and spoke very, very highly of it. So I'm delighted. And I have a question for you. Probably like you, I'm on the speaking circuit a lot. And one of the things I noticed is there's always this Q&A part, and some people are much better at that than other people are. I don't know how else to put this more decorously than that. Is improvisation something that can be learned, or is it something that's just an innate skill that you're good on your feet and you're quick, and you know, speak to that, if you will?
The answer is both, really. If you look at any person, any human being. Some people are innately gifted in different things, athletics, some are analytically minded and really good at solving problems. Others are innately gifted in improvisation. So there is that core DNA element filled with X factors that make somebody inherently good at one thing versus another thing. That said, all of these things that we just mentioned, including improvisation, are things that you can really learn. You can put a foundation in place and a structure in place on which you can build, study the tenets of improvisation, and practice them so that when you are in a Q&A situation, for example, and the unexpected question takes place, you're present, you're thoughtful, you're relaxed, so you're not the hamster. I say the hamster gets powers your brain doesn't get caught in the wheel and starts flipping over itself, and the stuttering and stammering takes place. You could just take it all in stride, and that's something everybody can improve upon. And also, for that matter, I'm extremely fortunate to not only learn from, I perform with the best improvisers in America, that echelon. Nobody stops practicing. No one. If you stop practicing improvisation, like any other muscle that you work out, the brain begins to atrophy as it relates to real-time presence and focus and communication. So it's something that you can always practice.
So your answer is yes and. Your answer is yes and. You know, what I'm hearing is we can all, it's like music. We can all be better musicians, but Mozart is Mozart, and you have to have some talent and continue to practice to be at that level. Got it. I got it. So let's talk about that whole phrase, sort of giving us a nice bridge to this about yes and. Tell us why that's so important in improv and how we can use that in our daily life.
Yes and is the cornerstone of all improvisation anywhere in the world. It is building block number one. Now, if you look at and talk with professional improvisers, you're going to get a different definition of this. So I'm going to stay on track as it relates to business and communication, professors, etc. So yes is unconditional acceptance. You give me this gift, this offer, this unexpected opportunity, this question. I accept it at face value, regardless of subtext or what I think it might mean. It is what it is. And then is the bridge to what you do with it. And is the bridge to your reaction, your experience, your background, your presence, how you are simply responding to it. So on its basic level, yes is thoughtfulness. You have my undivided attention, my focus, my concentration, my respect, and is the bridge to how you are thoughtful.
Now, let's talk about the challenges that people run into when they first try this. You know, what's the typical sort of barriers? What are some tips of the trade that you can sort of give somebody about how to overcome sort of the first challenges in being sort of on the road to being a master improviser?
Well, the first one I think is our own brain. We start self-doubting, judging, coming up with preconceived ideas, the biases that we naturally have, and the ones that we don't even know that we have that just fall into place, anywhere from ego bias or status quo bias, et cetera, et cetera. So we get in our own way. So the first thing I would say is just try, experiment, just test it out. Find a couple of good people around you and just practice inside of them, or go to a class. Any great class is going to teach you great things. The next thing I would say, though, is an extension from self, which I would also, even in a great, fast, rapid-fire exchange in a conversation with you, say, what are the barriers to innovation or even creativity and innovation? So if you start defining the barriers to innovation or, that extension, creativity and innovation, you're going to see a similarity to the barriers of improvisation. And many of them come around fear, fear of judgment, taking risks, chances, fear of failure, the repercussions of that, the status quo bias as mentioned before, change is hard. It will go on and on and on, as you know. So really, by looking at the barriers that will keep one from improvisation, you can extend that to innovation.
Yeah, it's making me think a lot about, in my own work, my work is about the creative power of constructive conflict and how what you're not trying to do is to, to attack a person personally, but you're also not trying to compromise or come to some kind of agreement. In innovation, you're trying to get to a new place, a third place, a new way. And, when I study these communities and I look at stock prices and things like that, what always occurs to me is that when there is this tension, this very positive tension, we create this high growth engine. And it seems to me that improvisation, the way you're describing it, is very similar. and that the yes and is taking you to a new place together, if you will.
Yes. So I'm going to be careful here, because when you talk about comedic or theatrical improvisation, you want this pure agreement and this unconditional support that is all uniform and really go in one direction. Now, as it's applied to business, creativity, and innovation, and to your point as well, wanting some kind of healthy conflict inside of it, we look at creating, from the improvisation comedic side, a culture of acceptance in the business world, wherein we are, and using yes and, you're able to communicate with each other in a positive framing, even if you disagree with each other. So it's to disagree without being disagreeable, and to have a conflict that's productive toward a mutually shared outcome. So it's the difference really between individual perspective, which we really want, and individual agenda, which we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. Now, give me a couple of areas where you've seen this really help an executive. Obviously it's sort of interpersonal, interactions, but maybe a couple of situations, a story or two that you've really seen this really help move the organization forward.
There are a number of them. So I'm going to actually throw some of the, I think, more unusual ones to you very quickly. Because I think the standard ones will fall into place in a lot of different ways. So the more unusual will be really related to leveling status. So a lot of executives, not across the board, so I want to be careful not to generalize, confuse rank inside the organization with status. Yes. And status, the way that we look at it, is something that's given you by other people or taken away from you by other people. And your rank is your job inside your organization. Mm-hmm. And so really the ability to level status then means that you can empower other people. So you can raise some status or lower some status, which is great for managing up as well as peer management. Yeah. And then ultimately, if you're working with C execs, VPs, the higher ranking individuals, boards, even for example, the ability to lower your status and really get that open communication, that free exchange of dialogue, that people will not then fall into the fear factor or the deference factor and just give too much respect and not open up, or wait for the leader to speak and then just say whatever compliments what the leader wants. Mm-hmm. So that ability to manage status and manipulate status is enormous. The other one that I would throw out there that a lot of people don't consider is energy management and energy manipulation. So improvisers, we warm up before everything. I don't know if you can see the luggage I'm carrying under my eyes. I have a little boy that's 4 and a little girl that's 1, and she woke up at 4 this morning. So that unexpected grapple that we all have to do comes in a lot of different ways. So what we say as far as it relates to energy is that energy and attitude are choices. And improvisers warm up pretty much before everything, before we get up on a stage. We get, like athletes do, get in the right physical place, the right mental place to go play the game at an elite level. And that's something that business people, professors, doctors, lawyers, you pick it, can actually do. Taking a minute or two, not like athletes who put on that Beats by Dre and focus for a full day on what they need to do. Rather, even in back-to-back meetings, taking a few minutes to decompress from one, get recentered for the next one, and enter the next one with force and conviction and intent as a leader to make sure that that meeting runs smoothly and you are affecting and influencing the people the way you want to, as opposed to the way you believe you are.
I'm going to ask you an improvising question here, and I'm sure you can relate to it. I spend an insane amount of time in different places of the world. I'm one of those 2 to 3 million mile guys, right? And I'm in Beijing or I'm in Cape Town or wherever it is. And one of the things that doesn't translate well to other cultures is humor. Mm-hmm. Right? It doesn't translate very well because it's very culturally specific. I'm wondering about improvisation. What are the things we should look for when we go to China or India or the Middle East? What should we look for? Is it universal, or are there some things we need to gauge here?
The root of comedy for me is actually universal. So humor is a little bit different. So I too have had the extreme fortune of traveling the world a couple times over on excuse me, lady, I'm getting excited here. Lady Improv's dime. The Singapore and Australia and Europe, Germany. I've even taught this through interpreters. And so I'm going to speak now more on just the comedy. So
Yep.
for me personally, when I perform internationally, especially if, for example, it's an English second language, I'm in their territory. So
Yep.
I
I'm asking.
take time across the board to know culture, to understand nuances, know what the right protocol is so that I can play within it. So when, for example, I've performed and taught in Dubai, I know what I'm not going to say. So there is that line between not editing yourself and auditing yourself.
Yes.
You don't want to cross. I always say you don't go to a church and do a frat show.
Yeah,
You don't go
yeah,
to a frat
yeah.
to a church show. You don't doesn't mean you change how your quality of performance.
Yeah, right,
You just
right.
play know your audience, right?
Right.
So similarly, I found that especially the way that I perform, which is I'm a very physical improviser,
Yep.
it translates pretty heavily. Everyone drinks, everyone eats, love still exists. We dance to music. You know, the music might be a little bit different, and how we express our emotions might change. However, there are some core parts to who we all are that transcend language.
So give me. This leads us to a nice sort of bow at the end here. Give me 3 things that somebody who's watching this can do to get on the road to being an improviser. And we're going to assume the first one is reading your book, getting to yes and. Okay, so that's a check. We'll check that one off. But give us 3 things that somebody can do to start learning to do this.
Well, without going to a class, because I would say that all major cities in America and really around the world now are embracing improvisation. So it's not like it was even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So there's a lot of great improv houses all around the country. And I would say research them. You get online, do your diligence, talk to people who have taken the classes, talk to the professors. If they don't want to have a conversation with you on the phone, then I think they're giving you a hint right away. So other than the book, which thanks for plugging, I would say, don't be afraid to take a class. Go experiment. A lot of them have drop-in classes too, so you don't have to sign up for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You could do a 2 or 3 hour block just to kind of feel it out. I would also say practice yes and. Yes and really is a fail-safe. You could practice it anywhere, anyone, any place, anytime. Flight attendants, bartenders, wait staff, significant others, children, anyone. And the extreme majority of people are not going to be, one, knowledgeable. They're not going to know. They're not going to catch it.
Yep.
It'll start feeling like a great conversation once you get comfortable with it, because, of course, you have to get comfortable using that language. So they'll get it in their heart and in their gut. They're not necessarily going to get it up here. And if they catch you using it, no one's ever mad. No one's like, oh, I took an improv class too. Why are you doing that to me? That doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And yes and as well slows the brain down. It forces you to be present. It forces you to be in the moment. Listen carefully to what somebody's saying just to build on what they're saying. So you're showing really great respectful communication. So if they catch you, they're not like, why are you showing respect? Why are you validating? No one acts that way. So it really is a fail-safe.
Wonderful. Give us some hints as to where we can find you, how we can learn more about your work, Bob Kulhan.
Well, you can find me at Business Improv, which is, I'm a founder and CEO of that company. So you can go to businessimprov.com or follow Business Improv at B-I-Z Improv. You can follow me on Twitter at Kulhan, and on both Facebook and Twitter. We are constantly just dumping information, links to great people, great articles, great pieces that sometimes have something to do with improv. Majority of the time, though, have to do with innovation or influence or whatever it might be. So
wonderful. You got some new stuff you're working on also?
I'm working on all sorts of stuff. I'm back in the comedy arm right now, since I've been spending a lot of time. My day job is Business Improv and, of course, the book. My night job is getting up on stage, and I got some fake characters. You can follow me on go to bobkulhan.com if you want to see the comedy side of it. I got tons of videos out there and writing. So
wonderful. Bob, thank you for spending some time with me on Office Hours today. I greatly appreciate it, and good luck with all of your improv and all your endeavors going forward.
Jeff, thank you so much for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks, Bob.